we can start, people have stopped joining. So, hello everyone, my name is Łukasz, and I hate Unicode and Python. Or at least I hate it until I finally understood it, kinda, maybe, not sure. But I will try to convey what I've learned and how to actually make use of Unicode and Python and not shoot yourself in the foot. First things first, I'm working at deploy, so I'm very thankful to my employer to put me here. And let's go. Let's start with a simple guessing game. I will not give you the answer right now because we will revisit this line of code at the end. Spoiler. How many times do you think an encode and decode to and from Unicode strings take place in this line, assuming this is Python 2 code? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Should we start too early because there are still people joining. So for those who joined right now, assuming this is Python 2 code, how many times is there an encode, an encoding process or decoding process in this line? We will see at the end of the lecture. All right. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, how many of you still have to maintain Python 2 code? All right. How many of you only code Python 3 right now? That's okay. How many of you don't like putting your hands up at lectures? So the thing is, for those who are still coding Python 2, I hope you will have an excellent 3-month journey right now because, as you know, Python 2 is going out of the window. Anyway, what we have to when we want to talk about Unicode, we have to first say if we are talking about Python 2 or about Python 3, because obviously there are big differences there. So with Python 2, how do we write Unicode? How do we write strings? What we have three. So we have strings and we have Unicode. That's how it was in Python 2. So strings were just bytes, and Unicode, well, you can see how you wrote it in your code. And actually, if you did not put any prefix, like the U prefix, it counted as if it was the B prefix. And also, the question is, what actually is Unicode in Python? Because a friend of mine, may or may not be called Janusz, actually, said that he always thought that the text that was encoded in UTF-8 was Unicode. And actually, it's not Unicode. You know what it is? It's just bytes. Because in Python, if we have, the UTF-8, not sure if I mentioned that. Because what we have is, in Python 2, string is just an array, more or less, an array of bytes. And what is Unicode? Well, I could start talking about how the internal representation of Unicode in Python is, but the truth is, for you, it doesn't really matter. All you have to know is that it is something, it's stored somehow in the memory, so that Python knows that this actually is a Unicode string. This is an A letter, this is a W letter, this is an O umlaut, and this is all that you need to know. And yeah, the string is just bytes. The second thing is how do you convert between the Unicode and string and the other way around. So if you have your Unicode string, which is, as I said, basically an abstraction, you encode it into a string. You get a physical representation, which is just bytes, as I said previously. And if you have that physical representation in the form of the Python 2 string, you can decode it using encoding to get the Unicode object. So, the encode method gives you bytes, the decode method gets you the abstract thing. Or, as you can see here. One thing that is really, really important is that you do not, I repeat, you do not decode Unicode and you do not encode strings in Python 2. We'll see how it goes in Python 3, but it's roughly the same. Why? Well, you will see. We will all see. One thing that you have to know as well, if you intend to work with Unicode, is the implicit type conversion that takes place during the code execution. What do I mean by that? Is that it means that when you're calling some function, for example, the type of the variable is changed. We'll see. So, for example, if you want to write something to a file, we do a s.write, and we give an argument that's a Unicode string. It gets implicitly converted to a Python 2 string. Why? Because, well, you cannot store an abstract entity on your drive. Your drive consists of bits and bytes, so you first have to convert it. The same thing is your library that you wrote or someone else's. There's a method. It can convert what you passed as the argument to something else, and you have to remember that. I know that it might sound obvious right now, but yeah, you still have to remember about it. The second thing is the string formatting functions. The dot format, the percent formatting string, and also the Python string templates. Out of curiosity, who ever used string templates, the third thing? Wow, 3 people. 4, but okay. I've never used them, but yeah, there are other. Anyway, so if you give if foo here is a string and you pass bar, which would be a Unicode string, bar will be converted to a string and may or may not raise a Unicode exception. Same thing with the person formatting and the templates. And the third thing is the encode and decode functions, because guess what? They expect an argument to be of a given type, which means, as I said, you do not encode strings because they are because the encode function is meant to get Unicode. So, what does the encode function do? If it gets something, it first ensures that the argument is Unicode. So what does it mean for us? If we pass a string, the Python interpreter, the Python interpreter will first try to convert that string to Unicode in order to convert it back to a string. Nice, right? And the same thing happens to decode, but in reverse. Now it's quiz time, and this is the second part of my lecture. And I would really like you to participate, because that's the point of this lecture. If you want to figure out how to work with Unicode without issues, really try to participate, because otherwise it makes no sense. So we have a file, one was byte. Oh, and for now we are doing only Python 2, as I said. Next we'll do the same thing, but with Python 3. So if you've never coded in Python 2, don't worry. Because also the theory is relatively the same. So we have that file. The first line, if you don't know, means that all the bytes in the file are encoded using UTF-8. This may or may not matter, but this first line is going to be the same for all the bytes, so don't worry about it much. So what we do, we open a file, we open it as text, denoted by the W letter, and we write tralala format ASCII. And now the question for you all, is what will actually happen? Will this work? Will this raise an exception? If yes, which one? What do you think?
Encode, decode, error, something like this.
I can hear you.
Raises, decode errors. I don't remember exactly. Something like this.
Maybe you
ASCII encoder, ASCII encoder.
Okay, so how many of you think that this will raise encode or decode error? How many of you think it will work fine? Okay, so the truth is, it actually will work fine. Why? I think that if you are thinking about this L letter, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, because we have the UTF-8 encoding, the L letter will just be encoded using UTF-8 and will be, I mean, it will be converted to bytes before even running the program. It will, in the byte code, the L letter will already be translated using UTF-8. That's the reason why it worked this time. But don't worry, the other bytes will be different, and we'll have more to think about that. So right now, what we did is we switched the strings at the bottom to two Unicode strings. Same question. What do you think will happen and why? I'll give you a moment to think about it.
Now you have the UnicodeDecodeError.
I'm sorry, I still cannot hear you.
Now you have the UnicodeDecodeError.
Yes, maybe. So, who thinks we'll have a UnicodeDecodeError? Who thinks this will be okay? I said it won't happen anymore. Okay, so the thing is, it will raise an exception, the Unicode encode error right now. Why? Because we are, as I said previously with in the theory slide, what we want to do, we want to write to a file which is a set of bytes. So if we pass something to the write function, Python will try to convert that to bytes. So what you can see is that you have a ASCII code that cannot encode character something in position 12. What does that mean? We have one string, one Unicode string, which has 4 characters, so that's not it. This one has around, I don't know, no idea, but I guess that's not 12. So that probably means that this format function actually works. So we got a string that says tralala ASDL, and then what happens is that this whole string was, Python tried to convert it to a regular string, and that's when it failed. Next question. What we have is a Unicode string to the left and a regular string to the right. You know the question.
It should be the same.
It should work.
Should not.
Work should be the same.
Should not.
The answer is a Unicode decode error this time. Why decode? Well, we can check. What we have here is the problem is in position 3. So I guess the M is the culprit. Why is it? Well, before we start writing to this, what we first have to do is what we first have is the format function. The format function has Unicode to the left and a string to the right, which means it will try to convert the string to Unicode. And if you don't, well, and you cannot actually pass any encoding here. So it will try to encode using the ASCII encoding, and it will fail converting the L from the string to Unicode L, hence raise the exception. The decode error, and that's, for example, the way you can try to figure it out. If you want to write something to disk, you'll probably get an encode error, and if it's a decode error, then the issue is somewhere else. Okay, we're switching the strings. Now we have a string to the left and a Unicode string to the right. And yes?
Same exception?
Same exception.
No, this won't work.
Okay, so who thinks it's going to work? Because I heard that some people said that. Same exception. No one. Decode encode. Encode error in position 3. Well, it's roughly the same thing, but in reverse. What we have here is still the format function that will first try to convert the Unicode string to a binary string, and it will fail because it cannot convert the L from Unicode to bytes using the ASCII encoding. What we'll do now is we will do the same examples, but we'll open the file as binary, and we'll see what happens this time. So, the first file that went perfectly fine. Now we are opening it as binary. And what do you think will happen? Will it still be fine or not? Decode error, encode error, what will happen? What do you think?
Will work.
Okay, some people say it will work.
It will work.
It's the same. It's the same. This one.
Okay, so the answer
This one.
is it will work, yeah. Okay, you were saying yes. You guessed right. Or maybe it was an you guessed right. The sixth file, which means we have two Unicode strings and we're writing them to the disk. What will happen? Will it work? Code. It will fail while encoding. It's the same thing. So you can see position 12, which means it will fail while writing the whole string to the disk. Next file, we have Unicode and string. We'll try to go a little faster right now.
To the fake. It's exactly as before.
It will fail with a decode error on position 3. Yeah, it's the same thing as earlier. And the 8th file. It will actually fail with an encode error. So what this means is that for Python 2, there isn't really any difference between binary files and text files. So this is also what you have to know. Next thing, encode and decode. So if we have a string that contains a non-ASCII letter, and we try to encode it using GS8. So this is what I said you are not supposed to do. You're not supposed to encode strings and decode Unicode. What do you think will happen? encode error. Okay? Who thinks an encode error will happen? Hands up. Who thinks something else will happen? Well, you're right, because this is the issue that people usually don't understand. I'm trying to encode, but it gives me a decode error. Why? Why? Well, the reason is that the encode method expects the thing to the left to be Unicode. So what it will do is it will, I think it's the encoding module, it will do encoding dot decode the string to Unicode, which will cause problems because you can't convert the array. And let's do it the other way. We are now decoding a Unicode string. That should be easy for you, because it's almost the same example. Well, it will give you an encode error this time. Why? Because the decode function expects you to have a string as the object from which you are calling it. So it will first encode the Unicode string to a regular string in order to decode it. So this is the problem that happens when you get some input from the user, for example, and you don't decode it early enough, and then you have something and you don't know what it is, if it's a string or a Unicode string, and then you're trying to make some operations on it. And if there are no non-ASCII strings here, then the Python interpreter will decode ASD just fine to a string, and then decode it back to Unicode. And it will work perfectly until someone inputs, for example, their name in the form, and they happen to be named Łukasz, for example, and you have the help, and then everything will explode, and you will not know why it happened right now, even though it worked fine with 20 other people previously. How to write things to disk to be able to pass Unicode strings as arguments? Well, what you can do is you can use the codecs module, and you use that codecs module to open the file, and you pass the encoding as the argument. That way, if the file has, if you call the write method with a string, what will happen is it will just write the string to this. But if you happen to pass a Unicode string as the argument, it will know which encoding to use to first convert the Unicode to a string and then write it to this. So this is how you can do it easily. And now let's switch to Python 3. And what's the difference? Well, we have bytes and strings. So bytes are just bytes, and strings are what we're calling Unicode strings in Python 2. It's roughly the same, but the names are different. So bytes are just ones and zeros, and string is that abstract entity, abstract thing that you don't care about. I mean, you don't care about its representation, you just care that it is an abstract representation, hence you cannot do things like this, etc. So let's do this one more time. The file that worked just fine in Python 2, what will happen in Python 3? So what we have is we open the file as text, we write bytes, and we format those bytes to bytes, and then we write that to this. What will happen? What do you think? Error. Okay. Would work. You will get an error, but not the encode or decode type of error. You'll get a syntax error. The thing is, Python 3 protects you and prevents you from putting this letter in bytes, because it knows that it cannot represent the arrow letter using only bytes and no encoding. So this is really good. That's what's really good about Python 3, is that you will get the syntax error even without, even before actually running the function. The error will happen while parsing the file already, giving you a hint that something is wrong. Next thing, 2.py. We are opening the file as text, and we have two Unicode. We have two strings actually, and we write them to disk. What will happen? There is a catch here. As if there were no catches in previous slides.
It's okay.
Who thinks there will be a Unicode or Unicode encode or decode error? Who thinks some other error, like syntax error? And who thinks it will work just fine? It will work fine, but there is a catch. Well, it will work fine because Python 3 can use a default encoding. If you give him Unicode strings, it will use some kind of default encoding to encode them to bytes to put them on the disk. But the problem is you don't really know which one will be used. I don't really remember it right now. I have it on further slides. There's a function that gives you that encoding, but the thing is, it depends either on the operating system, because on Linux, from what I know, from what I remember, it's UTF-8, and on Windows, it's dependent on your machine locale, which means in Poland it's going to be Latin 2, in Western Europe it's going to be Latin 1, etc. So it will work, but you cannot be sure what will be in the file actually. Next file. We have a bytes to the right, string to the left. Right, syntax error. Again, we are protected here. Next slide. Bytes to the left, Unicode to the right. What we'll get is another kind of error, an attribute error this time. And again, it's the good thing that Python protects us, and it doesn't want us to call format on bytes, because it knows that in 99% of the cases, we don't want to do that. So, that's cool. Again, we do the same thing, but with binary files.
Syntax.
Syntax error, yeah, right.
Okay.
To say it will work fine. No. What we get here is that byte-like object is required and not string.
Syntax error.
Syntax error. And
Nie ma metody formatu. There's no format.
yeah, exactly. Bytes has no attribute format. Again, encode and decode. We already said that because you should know that now.
Syntax error.
Syntax error, because we have bytes. Oh, and another one, because this one contains the arrow letter, and this one. an attribute error because we don't have, we can't encode. And if we want to decode stuff, how's that? How's that? It means it will be okay. No, you cannot decode strings. Remember, it's a string. You cannot call it decode on it. So what we have, what are the advantages of Python 3? Is you cannot convert strings to bytes implicitly, and the other way around. It will break, which is good because we will know right away that something is wrong. It does not contain the dangerous methods like format on bytes, and it catches the errors at parsing time as opposed to runtime. So you will know that something's wrong earlier. And this is the slide I was talking about. Local get preferred encoding is the function, that's the method that gives you the encoding that's going to be used to convert to a text file. Also, if you want to know how to encode the a Unicode string to a file name, because on the disk you can have some different encodings. You can get the get file system encoding. And if you want to know what will happen if you are trying to write to a console, a Unicode string, what will be the encoding that will be used to convert it to bytes. Prior to writing to the screen, it's sys standard output encoding. So the takeaway from this lecture is the following. This is the most important slide of the whole lecture, and I would like you really to all remember what's here. Well, what we have is we have bytes that are just that. They are bytes, bits, ones and zeros, and they live in the outside world, which means they are in files, they get to your application from the network, etc. What you should usually do, if you want to have a good architecture, well, of course, we are talking about text. If you are transferring images, etc., it's perfectly fine to store bytes in the Python application. But usually, if we're talking about text, what you want to do is you want to get the bytes from the network and decode them as fast as possible to Unicode and store in your in your application. I mean, in the memory, of course, and store it as that abstract entity, which is a string, a Unicode string. And then, if you want to go to the outside world again, to convert, you have to convert that Unicode string to bytes if you want to store that data on files, send it to the user, or maybe to a database, for example. Then what you have to do, unless you have functions that encode the data for you, you have to encode that file. And if you do this, I can almost guarantee you that you won't have issues with Unicode in your Python 3 code. So, the guessing game again.
It's Python 2 or it's Python 2?
Now let's try to figure out what is happening here. This is Python 2, just so you know. So yeah, this won't be an error, of course, for example. So the question was, because some maybe that happened at the start, how many times in this Python 2 line of code you will have an encode or decode happening? Some say 4. Does anyone think about another number, for example? I don't know. 3, 5, 10. slide.
Yeah, it should be work. My opinion should be work.
Sorry?
In my opinion, should be work correctly.
No, it won't work.
No.
I mean, it will work, probably. Yeah, it should work, I think. That would be better. Yeah, I think it will work, but the problem is that, I mean, there's no problem, because it will work. But how many times will you have the encoding and decoding routines? Okay. Some say 3, some say 4. I have one person that says 5. So, and you get a cookie because it's 5 actually. Why? Let's go. Let's go from the right. Well, we call the encode method, and what it does, it requires string here. So that's probably the thing that people who said 4 missed. So first, the UTF-8 string requires bytes here. So first, we are talking about Python 2. So it's a string, it's not a Unicode. So it will convert this UTF-8 Unicode string to a string. Then encode will try to encode this string, so it will first take out the UTF-8. Then encode will first decode the string to a Unicode string and then encode it. And then we have the format method that will then convert it to Unicode. And then we have the write method that will convert it to bytes again. If you're interested, I suggest you to check those 2 articles. They explain it even more in detail. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the question is, does attribute error will occur during parsing or code execution? From what I know, attributes. Good question. I think it's.
I would say execution because you
Yeah,
have dynamic.
I think it's right. It will probably. I think that everything that's not a syntax error will be during the execution, and the other things, the other errors will occur during runtime. So yeah, I think it's here during the runtime. Next question. What would you recommend to normalize different Unicode strings with different encoding escapes? I got really interested in the question. So if you ask it, and well, it's been asked by an anonymous person. If you want to de-anonymize yourself, you can. Which actually nice, because I'm not really sure I understand.
Unicode strings don't have encodings.
Yeah, they don't have encodings.
So maybe that's why the question is not understood.
I'm sorry, I don't really know what exactly you meant with that question. If you want to talk about it, feel free to catch me after the talk and we can discuss this. Next question, what do you think, why people actually don't care about handling Unicode properly? I guess the real problem is that people just write code, they run it, maybe they make a few unit tests, they forget about special characters, especially if they are they're using a language that uses only ASCII characters, and they think, okay, it works, so it might be fine, it passes my unit test, so it must be okay. That's all. They don't think it through. What about STR and Unicode? Are they doing similar stuff? Yes. Yes. Okay, next question. Oh. How to fix all failed examples?
Use Python 3.
Yeah, one thing is to use Python 3, but that's I think right now it's obvious. I would say apply common sense, but that's not the answer you are waiting for. Well, remember about the rules that the things that are, if you are remember about the type conversions, that if you're writing something in this conversion, remember that what you have to the left will have to be of the same type as the thing to the right, and if it does not, it will get converted. And remember about the encode and decode functions, which do the same, and apply the methodology in this slide. So make sure that you decode your strings at the earliest, and then work only on Unicode strings. I mean, the code in the examples was obviously flawed, and it was made on purpose, but well, just other than don't write code that has bytes on one side and strings on the other side, and well, other than that, just store everything as Unicode as fast as possible. Okay, so no more questions. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.